farming can be very consuming. You know what I mean by that? I like to say there's no part-time farmers. Farming is a full-time job, whether you're getting a full-time salary or not. So the key is becoming more efficient at it. And that's what this session is about. And so again, this one is specifically kind of geared for, and when I talk about farming, my personal passion is what I think is more accurately called market gardening. We're not talking about many hectares and big tractors. And I'm not saying there's not a place for that. You know, I'm sure there is a place for that, but it's not my personal passion, because I want to do what Mrs. White talks about. She's, you know, there's quotes in Ministry of Healing about how there's tens of thousands of people living in the cities that if they were given a little piece of land could, you know, become self-supporting. And so I want to try to promote a model that is easily replicable. Very, very few people can afford hundreds of hectares and large tractors. You know, I mean, in the States, the big tractors and combines and things for wheat and, you know, all that. I mean, these farmers spend millions of dollars. You know, one piece of equipment may be $500,000. It's crazy. But most people, if they were really careful, most people could afford 1 hectare, right? Maybe? Yeah? And the kind of farming, the market gardening I'm talking about, the most successful people are doing it on less than 1 hectare. There's a person, a name that I would encourage you to look up on YouTube, Connor Crickmore. Connor Crickmore. He's in New York, Neversink Farm. He is, and again, I don't like to throw numbers out because people start seeing money signs in their eyes. But the reason I share numbers is because we have this mentality that you can't make a living on a small farm. That is not true. You can. Connor Crickmore doesn't even own a tractor. He's farming half a hectare, and he's making close to $400,000 on half a hectare. Now that's gross. You know, net is half of that. But still, half of that is a lot of money. But the key is, and the amazing thing is, with him, he works 5 days a week, 8 hours a day. How does he do it? It's because of farming efficiencies. So I have here, I want to stop. Have any of you seen this before? The reason I put this picture here, of course, I'm a little biased because my son invented this tool here. But I don't think it's a stretch to say that this tool right here has made small farms in America, and not just America, worldwide, profitable. Because it's a way to harvest baby greens mechanically. You can see it's just a battery-powered drill that powers a reciprocating blade. The blade's going like this, and that brush is spinning, and you just go along, and the blade cuts the things, and the brush spins it into the basket. Just go along, dump it, go along some more, dump it. And, before people were using a knife like this, and this is 10 times, 20 times more efficient than a knife. So all of a sudden now, in the States, most produce comes from California. California. California produces more produce than, I don't know the current statistics, but more than like all but 5 countries of the world. It's like a country all on its own. They produce huge amounts of produce. And they're using tractors, going over the field and getting hundreds of pounds of greens an hour. So they can sell it much cheaper. But now with this, small farmers can compete with California on price, but more importantly, small farmers have higher quality, so they can even charge a little more and still have a good market. So I'm going to recommend another book, and again, I don't know how easy these books are going to be for you, but this book for us was rather revolutionary, and for many people it's been revolutionary. I don't know if you can read the subtitle there, but it's called The Lean Farm: How to Minimize Waste, Increase Efficiency, and Maximize Values and Profits with Less Work. How many would like to do that? Minimize waste, increase efficiency, and maximize value and profits with less work. That sounds like a winning proposition. And what this man has done, Ben Hartman, are any of you familiar with lean manufacturing? Okay, a handful of you. It's something that Toyota kind of came up with years ago. It's focusing on getting rid of waste. And it's a whole system for organizing factories to be very, very efficient. So what this man has done is taken the principles of lean manufacturing and applied them to the farm. And it's an excellent book, and some of the things I share will be from that book, but you need to read the book if you want to get the most out of it. So let me just share a few beginning thoughts. Number one, we don't have all the answers. We're very much on this journey. When I got this book, the Lean Farm book, that changed our farm quite a bit. We actually had been starting to change before that, trying to become more and more efficient. And we still have work to do. We know there are things we want to do, but maybe we don't have the money yet or the time yet to implement them. But we're on the journey. This is another important thing. Efficiency and mechanization are not synonymous. Synonymous? They're not the same. Some of the most efficient tools on a small farm are well-designed hand tools. It's not about buying tractors and getting big gadgets. In fact, going back to this Connor Crickmore, I told you he doesn't own a tractor. He doesn't even use a walking tractor, a BCS or something like that. Only hand tools. So you don't need big tools big tools mean big money. And most farmers, small farmers, don't have that. Bigger is not better. So in America, we have this mentality that bigger is always better, but it's not true. In fact, I think when it comes to quality, bigger is worse. The quality is always going to be better. Thank you. When it's artisan food, it's handcrafted. Of course, God, food is not made. God makes the food. But when you tend it with your own hands, I believe you can have a better product. So our advice would be, don't get bigger, just get better and more efficient. And Elliot Coleman would say, if demand is outpacing supply, what's your choices? You can either increase supply by getting bigger, or raise your prices, right? If there's more demand than supply, raise your prices. That's not a bad thing, is it? Okay, so first thing, standardize, standardize, standardize. I can't overemphasize this. This is actually a picture of our farm, part of it. And if you're at the weeding seminar, you'll see another picture of our farm where this area in front here used to be just 3 larger fields. But because of the shape of our land, it wasn't rectangular, it was what is it, a trapezoid or something? It was, it was like this. Yeah, trapezoid. So that was very awkward when it came to the floating row cover and things, because you'd have all this excess, at this corner and down at this corner. It was just really awkward. And so my wife actually helped us. We went to a seminar. Some of you maybe have heard of Jean-Martin Fortier, J.M. Fortier. He wrote a book, The Market Gardener. It's another excellent book. He's a French-Canadian. But we went to a seminar by him, and my wife encouraged me, why don't we just make our fields all the same size? And I had all these arguments, well, because of this and this and this. But the more I started thinking about it, the more I said, I think it would be worth it. And so now all our fields are the same size, even our hoop houses and our fields. So it means when I have a piece of floating row cover, it used to be that we had all these different sizes. And then in the summer, you fold them all up, and when it comes to next winter, it's like, okay, which is which here? And it's a headache. It doesn't seem like it would be, but it is. And you have different lengths of sprinkler rows. And we use a lot of these black silage tarps, we call them. What do you call them? It's plastic, black on one side.
Polyadesilos. It's in Romanian, but we also have in Europe. I checked.
Yeah, I know, because these come from Europe. My son imports them from Europe. So they're amazing. I'll talk more about them in the weeding seminar. But now it's all one size. I don't have to think about, the big ones and the small ones. And it's just, so I would encourage you, make all your plots, if you can. Sometimes the way your land is, it's impossible. But if possible, make it all the same size. And the beauty of this is it simplifies everything. The number of beds in each plot is the same, 8 beds. We have 75 centimeter wide beds, 100 feet long, so that's 32 meters or something long. And, we have this crop rotation that moves around these fields, and we just know exactly how many plants go in each field. It simplifies things so much. I know how many plants go in a bed. Kale plants, I need this many plants per bed. We have a chart. We know how many to plant, and so on. Fencing, we put up deer fencing just around the plots that we know the deer like. We've learned from trial and error what the deer like to eat. And so we fence those in, but we have a certain length of fence, and we know how many fence posts we need for each one. We just pound the posts in, and it's amazing. Another thing I would encourage a lot, and this is really if you have employees. We don't have employees, but we have interns that come to learn. And when you have interns, and Christian's going to be saying, wait, I never saw this. Well, this is something we're still working on. You can explain something. You can explain a process to a worker, but are they going to remember it next week and the week after that? Probably not. They have to do it a few times before they remember it. So, are you familiar with SOPs, standard operating procedures? So you just, these are the steps that we take when we transplant. And you have it written out. So you can tell the worker, go to field number 3 and plant a bed of kale. And let's see. They go to the chart. Okay, kale is at this spacing. I need this many plants, and this is how I do it. So the more you can implement that kind of thing, number one, they feel good because they feel a sense of independence. I'm not having to be told exactly how to do it. I can figure this out. And it ensures that you're getting consistent results. All these areas, seeding, bed preparation, transplanting, cultivation, harvest, post-harvest, all of those should have a standard procedure. And then take it a step further and include a reasonable time for completing each task. Then encourage workers to try to beat the time. Figure out better methods for completing the task. You're trying to instill in your workers this lean thinking. How can I do this? It's called Kaizen, which is continuous improvement in Japanese, I guess. But you're continually thinking, okay, how could I do this more efficiently? Let's see, if I'm cutting like this and I'm left-handed, then I need the container over here. So it's less, if it's over here or back here, that's not efficient. It's got to be right there. And so all those little things, it's the little things that add up to efficiency. Okay. Second thing, straighten out your noodles. Noodles? Do you know what noodles are? Like spaghetti? You see spaghetti, it's just... So, what he encourages in the Lean Farm book is to take a task and draw a bird's eye view of your farm, and how do you complete that task? So say you're going to prune the tomatoes. So you go out of the barn and you've got to come over here and get, maybe you're using pruners or whatever, get those, and then you've got to come here and get the cart, and then the greenhouse is over here, and soon you have just, this kind of thing all over the farm. And that's very inefficient. So you're trying to straighten out your noodles. Well, a big part of that is to store your tools near the point of use. So if you have special tools for working in the tomato greenhouse, have them right there where you don't, you get down there and you realize, oh no, I forgot this. And so then you got to go all the way back here and get it and come back here. Well, if it's right there, then, and this is another thing we haven't done yet, but it's on our list to do. This is actually a picture of Connor Crickmore's tool wall. He has a tool wall out by his main fields and then another one by his hoop houses. And so, you know, when somebody goes out to the fields, they don't have to come all the way back to the barn if they forget a tool, because it's right there on the wall. Does that make sense? So you're focusing on workflow. Another area where this is really critical is when you harvest things, getting them through the washing and into the cooler or whatever. You know, is it a continuous flow? You have your sinks, then you have your spinner, and then you have your packaging, and then you have your cooler. And it's just... Okay, so those are just a few simple suggestions. Then the rest of the time, we're going to look at specific tools and techniques. So any questions on kind of the big picture here that we've talked about? Wow.
Concerning how to store the tools close to the point here in Romania. When you go the next day, we should buy new ones. So there is a problem.
Okay, yes. So if tools disappear, yeah, I could see that could be a little bit of an issue. You know, don't tell anybody this, but we don't even have a key to our house. You know, the keys to our car stay in the car. And if we had to lock our house, because we live in a barn, there's a lot of doors, and if somebody locked the barn, we wouldn't be able to go to bed at night. So, you know, for us, that's not an issue. We live way out, and yeah, so that's a good question. Well, I mean, you could put doors on it and a lock or something. I don't know. Any other thoughts or questions?
Yeah, concerning the fencing, you are protecting the plants from the animals. Do you use the kind of fencing that you can remove it?
Yes. So the question is about fencing. Yeah, I feel quite strongly that permanent fencing is more work and money than it's worth. You might disagree with that, and that's fine, but you know, a permanent fence is it's very expensive, number one. But number two, as soon as you make it permanent, then you've got to maintain it. Because what's going to happen? I mean, it's going to grow up. Well, you know, in the States, you know what they do. They just spray Roundup around the fence. You know, we're an organic farm, so we don't spray Roundup. So how are you going to keep stuff from growing up in there? Now, one thing you can do is just keep the bottom just a little bit up so you can go along with your weed whacker or whatever and keep it down. But otherwise, it's a lot of work to maintain your fence. And when you're farming, you don't want to be maintaining fences. You want to be farming. So what we use, it's a black mesh. I don't know. I'm sure it must be available in Europe. The trade name that we go by is Tenax, Tenax. Tenax Cintoflex is the name of the product. Cinto Flex, Flex. Tenax Cintoflex. You can Google that and see what it is. But it's 7.5 feet tall, so 2.5 meters or something tall. And it's this heavy-duty black mesh about this big. And some of it we've had for 20 years. So it lasts a long time. And so we have 8-foot T-posts. Do you know it's a metal? You have those? Okay. And then we just pound those in every 10 meters around. So that's very quick. It doesn't take long to pound those in. And then we just snap on an electric fence insulator. They're usually yellow where we are. They just snap onto the T-post. Just put one on the top of each post. And then we just hang the fencing from that. It comes down and just goes out like that on the ground, which is important because sometimes deer or something will try to go underneath. And that's all we do. And we've never had deer get through that. Now, it won't stop rabbits or other little things that might just chew through it. But then when we want to mow or weed eat around it, just pick it up and hang it from there and go around and then pull it down. So it takes, maybe 45 minutes to put up one around a thing. And I mean, maybe not even that long if you're really hurrying.
What about boars?
We don't have boars.
We have.
Yeah. Mrs. White has a quote about how in the last days vermin will increase and that we must kill them So, yeah, so I do think there's a place. My mentality is I do everything I can to avoid that kind of thing. But if they're insisting on coming and eating my crops and they're not getting the hint, then I just talk to one of my sons and they take care of it. I'm too soft for that. I couldn't do it myself, but they can, so I don't know. Okay, we better move on. So I'm going to talk about a lot of different tools here, and most of these I know are available in Europe. So they are available. Now, the second thing is many of them are kind of expensive. And so I realize that if you're starting out, you may say, wow, there's no way. But what I would just encourage you with is with any kind of manual trade, you have tools of the trade. If you're a carpenter, you have to have certain saws and things that will make your job more efficient. So it's no different in farming. The more efficient tools you get, the faster you're going to be able to do the job. So don't be afraid to invest in equipment if it's going to save you time, which in effect is earning you money. So let's talk about some of them. So we're going to kind of go through this in the order of the gardening process. How many of you have heard of paper pots? Okay, a number of you. Good. There's pictures here, and I don't know how much you can see them, but picture of paper pot tray stretched out. So this is a Japanese technology. It just comes, it's like, I don't know what you describe it like, but it comes, yeah, it's a honeycomb structure. It comes flat. You have this special stretcher that you pull it out, fill it with your potting soil, and then you seed it with this seeder right here up in the top. Super simple. It's just, it has different size plates with different size holes in it for different size seed, and it works best with round seed. So what we do, and what they're doing more and more in the US, is pelletizing seed, like lettuce. Lettuce is very hard, you know, it's a very odd shape to it, very hard to be efficient with, but they pelletize lettuce with just the clay and turn it into a round pellet. And then with this, you can seed it so fast. So you just pour your seed on this tray and just, you know, do this kind of thing. Make sure every hole has a seed in it. Put it over the paper pot tray, push a lever, and the two holes line up. The seeds drop in. And there's 264 cells in that paper pot tray. So I can seed 264 plants in, you know, once I put the seeds on there, if I'm doing a number of trays, you know, I mean, 10 seconds, you know, just boop, go to the next one, you know, so it's got space down at the bottom. Once all the holes are full, the excess seed you put down here, and then push it and go on to the next tray. And then for different size seed, beet seed, you know, again, we pelletize it so it's easier to drop. And that's a bigger hole, so we change the plate, and super fast. But that's only half of it. I'll show you the other half in a minute here. So paper pots and the gravity plate seeder, super. Now, of course, they have also vacuum seeders, but it's more complicated. Why get it, you know, with a vacuum seeder, it's hooked up to a vacuum, so it sucks the seed onto the holes. Then you put it over it and shut the vacuum off, and they drop. But then you've got to have a vacuum, you've got to have electricity, it's noisy, it's... Okay, and then this plant trolley here, this is something we made, but it will hold 12 trays. So in our greenhouse, you know, you used to take, I mean, at the most you can take 2 at a time and take them and move them here. Now we can move 12 at a time. And the trolley is just on a big oval, and it runs around the greenhouse. So when it's time to transplant, I can say, okay, get these and these, bring the trolley around, load it up, take it out to where we load it on the truck and take it down to the field. So a simple thing, but much more efficient. And then the last thing, and actually we just did this last year, is a hose trolley, just a cable strung up in the greenhouse with pulleys on the cable. And that way, you know, it used to be I'd be pulling the hose around, then when I get down here I've got to bring it back, and I'm pulling the hose around and I've got to come this way. Now I just, you know, just wherever I want to water, the hose is coming with me, and you're not tripping over it or anything. Simple, but very efficient. How many of you know what this is? I think in French, this was Elliot Coleman. This was one of the things he found in France that he brought back to the U.S. They call it a grelinette or something like that, after the name of the person who invented it. But the most efficient thing I can encourage you with on bed preparation is do the hard work up front. And, you know, I'm talking about beds. We do everything in beds, not just rows. Rows were designed for horses or tractors, you know, where you have wheels going down, but it's very inefficient use of your space. So we have beds that are 75 centimeters wide, and then we have walkways, which are, how wide are the walkways? 15 centimeters? 16? Well, a lot of ours are 12 inches, but we're going to 15 inches. So that's half of 75. So I think I was trying to figure this out.
So what is in inches, please?
Well, as narrow as you want to go is 12 inches for the walkway. But that's a little bit narrow, especially if you're not careful. You end up...
This is 30 centimeters. 30 centimeters.
30 centimeters is 1 foot. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So we do everything in beds, and you never walk on the beds. You walk on the pathways, and then you can straddle the beds like this and work, and you can easily step over them, but you're never walking in them. So the key is do the hard work up front. You want to get all the rocks out. And sometimes you think you've gotten the rocks out, and the next year they give birth to more rocks, right? But if you get the rocks out, and all the perennial weeds, all those deep tap-rooted weeds, then you don't have to deal with them again, usually. And then you want to make sure the soil has a good, what I call tilth to it. You know, it should be crumbly and soft. So if it's a high clay soil, you need to add, you can add sand or you can add organic matter. If it's a sandy soil, you need to add clay or organic matter, whatever it takes to get a really nice loose consistency. And if those beds are like that, then it makes everything else you do so much easier. And then this is where this tool comes in, the broad. Are you all familiar with the broad fork? No? Yes? Oh, it's wonderful. So you can get one the width of the bed. So you just push it in, step on it, pull it back, then step back of, this much, push it in again. Just work your way down the bed, and it will keep the soil loose without turning it over. It's a wonderful tool. Because, well, they come in different widths, but the widest one fits perfectly a 30-inch bed. Yeah, it's a wonderful tool because it's fast, efficient, and, we don't have time to go into no-till versus till, but I am being more and more convinced and convicted that the less you till your soil, the better. And I know that's a little bit controversial because, there are some Mrs. White quotes where she says, plow deep and plow often. But I can tell you from my experience that plowing deep and plowing often destroys your soil structure. So in my mind, from my study, I think what she was saying is the soil needs to be worked deeply. And I believe this tool here, the broad fork, does that. It works the soil deeply, but it's not turning the soil over. And that's just my observation as a farmer. When the more I mix the soil, the worse it gets. And the more I leave it alone, you know, and just use a silage tarp at the end of a cover crop or something, the looser it gets and the nicer the tilth is. So we can talk about that more later if you'd like, but it's I think they're about 10 inches, but some of them you can get, you know, 12 inches, 30 centimeters. Yeah. Which, you know, when she says plow often and plow deep, if you study, I mean, back then, because they didn't have big tractors, plowing deep was usually about this deep, you know. Okay, so for transplanting and seeding, and this is the most amazing thing with the paper pot planter, and this is made now in Europe, TerraTech. Are any of you familiar with TerraTech? It's a French company. They make this planter for the Japanese paper pots. So basically you take that tray with those 264 plants and put them on that tray, and those honeycombs are actually one long string. And so you pull out the end and put it in, and then you get back here and you just go like this. And you can plant 264 plants in 40 seconds. One person standing up. You know, it would take probably three planters, you know, doing this kind of thing, 5 minutes at least, if they were fast.
What's the name of that again?
It's called the paper pot planter. Now, I'll just warn you, the whole system, because it's kind of a system, you have to have special trays, and then you have to buy the paper pots, and then the planter. I mean, I hate to even say how much it is, because I mean, in the States, it'll cost about $3,000.
It's because of the duty you have to pay with the wars. Maybe in Europe it will be cheap.
Yeah, maybe, I don't know. That would be interesting. But the problem with this system is there's one company in Japan that makes the paper pots. They have the world monopoly on it. So that's a bit of a problem, and that's why we don't want to become totally dependent on it. But it's so it totally changed our transplanting this year, because it used to be, you know, you had to have a team to transplant. Now, one person. I can seed it all, and I can go out and plant it all. And I'm not even tired when I'm done.
But the planter is French-made?
Well, I mean, there's one made in Japan, one made in France, a couple made in America. So the company, they're okay if you make the planter. They just don't want anyone else making the paper pots. That's where they're making their money. So, yeah, the planter, it would be interesting to know. Do you know how much the planter is in Europe?
Like with all the trays and equipment?
Well, just the planter.
I think that's around 700 euros, if I'm right.
It's crazy because it's just a piece of metal.
So we can make it.
Yeah.
We can have one and
Yeah. I wish I could have brought one, but it's it's quite long, but
We import containers of Japanese food, so we can import also those.
yeah. If you can figure out a way to do it cheaper, it's so fast, so fast. Now, the cells are very small, so that means you have to plant them, at a much smaller size. So that can be a disadvantage, but you just have to adjust your timing for your seeding and all of that. Now, another thing, and I have one here, and this is Christians. Obviously, you need a handle on this, but this is a very simple tool that was originally made in Germany, but there was actually a Romanian who was manufacturing these for the German company. It's a seeder, and it's very, very simple. You see in the shaft, there's different size holes, and you just adjust the shaft for whatever hole size you want, and then you put it down, and you just pull it along like this, and it's dropping seeds. And 3 of these fit perfectly in a 75 centimeter bed. And the beauty of this, number one, it's got brushes to adjust, so it's very much precision. But the beauty is that, you never have to thin. If you have to thin your plants, you've just lost any money you were going to make on them. You can't be thinning plants. So it does it, at the right thickness. But then in my mind, the even more important thing is it's perfectly spaced. So that we're going to talk more about that in the weeding part. I don't do any crops now in every hole, because that makes 12 rows per bed, and you can't cultivate that. And so unless you have perfect weed control, you're going to have weeds to deal with. So the closest I come is every other one. And then I have hoes that I can cultivate between those. But if they're perfectly spaced, I can have a hoe that does 2 at once. I'll show you, or 3. So this is simple. Now again, in the States, this will cost $250. But Christian got it for 100.
€100 plus if you want to buy.
Yeah, they have different shafts for different sizes or different spacing. Simple, but again, it's expensive because it's a very specialized tool. And, when you have the corner on the market, you can charge whatever people will pay, right? So that's super important. Now look at this. This is where it really starts paying off. So good soil till when it comes to cultivation, if your soil is in really good shape, if you don't have rocks and it's not hard, cultivation is so easy, so fast. And of course, timeliness is the second key. If your weeds are bigger than that, you've waited too long to cultivate. It's best to cultivate before you even see the weeds. That's the time to cultivate. And so then you're just going along, stirring the soil. I wish Christian got these tools in the States, but then he couldn't ship them back, so he cut the head off of it. So you've got all these tools. Well, Christian, you can come help me. Well, here, no, there's one here. This is a great tool right here. And we're, what's that? So if this had a long handle here, I could demonstrate it better. But you weed just, this is not working. This is a tool that Connor Crickmore actually developed. And it needs some refining on this quick connect here. We've had some issues with it. But, you know, the problem with most cultivating is if you're just using a hoe, most of the time the hoe's not even in contact with the soil. So you're wasting most of your energy and time with the soil with the hoe in the air, right? If you're doing this kind of thing. With these tools, it's always in contact with the soil. You're just doing this kind of thing. And if it has the right handle, you're not leaning over, you're just sweeping the soil. And it's so fast. And you're not chopping weeds because they're only this big. You're just, you know, if the soil's in good shape, you can just go like this. And then it's also got these wire heads. So like this. See, I can fit it between, you know, you don't, this thing needs some work. It needs to be oiled. So this is a wonderful, if your soil is good, this is wonderful because this will not ever, well, I shouldn't say not ever, but it won't cut your plants off. You just, you know, and that's all there is to it. And then you can see this picture here, so you can put, that goes on here. And that is designed to go on either side. You know, say you've got carrots, little carrots. That goes on either side, so you can cultivate 3 rows at a time if they're perfectly spaced. So super efficient. Yeah, if your tool is not in full contact with the soil, then you're wasting your time. Now, the one we don't have here is the stirrup hoe. Do you all know the stirrup hoe? It's like the shape of a stirrup. You know what a stirrup is? For horses, a saddle. You put your feet in on the saddle. So the stirrup hoe is designed to cut on the push and the pull. And it's for your pathways, for harder ground or for bigger weeds. Because we all know we're supposed to get them small, but sometimes life happens and they get bigger. And so this one you have to lean over a little bit, but you're, again, 100% of the time in the soil, cutting off those weeds. Okay, so for harvesting, I already talked about the quick cut that we showed at the beginning, the tool my son developed. That one, I don't know how much it costs in Europe. He has distributors in Europe, but in the States it's $530, something like that. But if you start figuring out, if you're paying for labor and that kind of thing, it quickly pays for itself. Another simple thing is these baskets, over-the-shoulder baskets here. So you're picking with both hands, if it's tomatoes or whatever, and it's just going right there. Much more efficient than if, you're picking here and putting down here. And I would recommend some kind of plastic bins like this, because the beauty of those is they never wear out. Or I shouldn't say never, but I can tell you this, these yellow bins, again, I don't know if they're available here, we've never broken one. And we've had them for probably at least 12 years. And then when it comes to cleaning, you just have a pressure washer or something that you clean them up and stack them and they're ready for the next time. Whereas if it's wooden or cardboard or anything like that, it's not going to last. Reusable for many years. Okay, then it comes to post-harvest. Have you all heard of a bubbler? You can see a picture here. It's just, like a jacuzzi. You have jacuzzis. A jacuzzi motor, a blower. And you just hook it up to some pipe and put it in a big container and drill holes in the pipe. And you turn the motor on and it just... And what it does is it just gently washes the greens. It stirs them up and the dirt falls off and goes to the bottom. And it's so fast compared to any other method. And then you just skim them off and so it's a simple thing. You just need to buy a jacuzzi motor and all the other parts. Just put it in a big water trough or something. It really, really speeds up washing greens. And for us,
how deep the tank should be?
Maybe this deep. It depends how many greens you're doing. But in the States, greens, especially baby greens, salad, mesclun mix, is the most profitable crops on a small farm. Because they're fast, they grow fast, and everybody eats them. And you can have many, many crops through the year. A lot of the greens, like arugula, it's less than a month from seed to harvest. So you could theoretically be doing, 12 crops on the same soil over the course of a year.
Like, I wonder if you sell them in the same day or the next day, because if not, you just destroy the leaves.
Yes, so the question is, do you sell the same day? Of course, we have a cooler that we can put them so that keeps them fresher. But we either harvest the day we sell or the day before. Yeah. Because you want your product to be as fresh as possible. That's part of your marketing. And then for spinning the greens, I don't know how much, I think maybe in Europe you don't have so many of the big washing machines. But, what you do is you modify a washing machine for washing clothes. And, it has a spin cycle where it spins really fast and gets all the water out of the clothes. You just put a basket in there with your greens and you modify it so it's just got a switch on the spin cycle. And you just turn it on and they spin and get all the water off, and then you dump it out and you weigh it out. And so very simple, but very, very efficient. And these things, you know, the greens harvester, the bubbler, and the spinner have made greens very profitable for small crops. I mean, for small farms. Okay, so closing thoughts. Key is to have a mindset of continual improvement. So you're never content where you are. You're always thinking, how can I do this better? How can I do it more efficiently? You know, in the States, there's a stereotype. You know what I mean by stereotype? Of the dumb farmer, you know, who's just... and, you know, the smart boys go to school and the dumb boys stay on the farm and run the farm, right? Do you have kind of that stereotype here? That's just wrong. You know, now Mrs. White talks about we need educated farmers. And running a small farm efficiently is one of the most mentally taxing things you can do, because there's dozens of things you have to be thinking about. You know, it's not just about harvesting today. You have to be planting for harvest a few months down the road, you know, and you have to be thinking about ordering seed for next season. And, you know, it's just, there's a lot of complexity. And so you just have to be continually thinking about how you can do a better job of it. And I wanted to share this quote with you. This is a really neat one. She says, "Could our brethren remember that God can bless 20 acres of land and make them as productive as 100, they would not continue to bury themselves in lands. Satan is pleased to have you increase your farms and invest your means in worldly enterprises, for by so doing, you not only hinder the cause from advancing, but by anxiety and overwork, lessen your prospect for eternal life." So, you know, we're going to talk a lot this weekend about the benefits of agriculture and how working in the garden can draw you closer to God, but there's no guarantees there. You know, if the business of agriculture is all consuming, then it could be keeping you from eternal life. So I love this quote because she's saying, don't keep trying to get bigger. You know, I like to take this ratio. If God can bless 20 acres and make it as productive as 100, he can bless 1 acre and make it as productive as 5, right? So I can do it on a small enough scale that I can actually surround it all and it's not overwhelming me, and have time to come to Romania for agriculture conferences and things like that. And then my last caution would be, you don't want to get so focused on efficiency that you lose the joy of gardening. After all, it's most important that we're walking with God in the garden. You know, sometimes I like to just go out to the garden and just kind of get down and look at the plants and feel the soil. And I love to go out in the evening and just walk around and just kind of, wow, so beautiful. And, you know, that's not efficient, right? But you don't want to miss out on that. You need to be able to just say, this is amazing. Can you believe I can earn my living out here? Those poor people that are stuck in traffic in the city right now. You know, this is amazing. The sound of the birds, the smell of the earth, the wind blowing through your hair. It's like, wow, God, I feel like a man out here. So don't lose that. But my hope and my belief, and I signed up for Connor Crickmore's course, is I don't even want to try to earn $400,000. Money is not a goal for me. But if I can earn a third of that and do it in, Connor Crickmore is going year-round. Now, we go year-round, but for us, my son and his wife do the winter farming, and we do the spring and summer farming. So our marketing, so we start seeding in February. 1st of February, we start seeding. But we're finished marketing end of August. And then September, we're planting strawberries and we're planting cover crops. But by end of September, I can be finished largely for the year. Of course, there's always projects. We have hoop houses to put up or to repair or whatever. So I don't want anybody to think that we have nothing to do after the end of September. But as far as having freedom to travel to something like this, from October, November, December, January, we have a lot of freedom. Okay, any questions? I guess it's lunchtime, so if your stomach's not pulling you to the cafeteria, we can have a few questions.
It's not so much a question, but it's just a small detail you just mentioned right now. It's indirect. I just noticed when you spoke about it, and I think it's an important issue, and Ellen White speaks about that. And that you have your sons, and the families of your sons also helping out. And I remember that Ellen White mentions the fact that there should be the top 2-3 families coming together, support each other. And I think that's very important for the success of such a work, because if you're just working alone with your wife, it comes to a point that the work will be so overwhelming that you will not be able to handle it. So 2-3 families together make it a lot better.
Yes, the comment for the recording was just that it's really helpful to have multiple families working together so that one person is not overwhelmed, or one family. It's very true. And I really believe that this model that we have is very replicable, because you're sharing the infrastructure. So when I'm finished my seeding for the summer, he's just beginning his seeding for the winter. So he slowly takes over and it's not like we have, I do a lot of the fall seeding for him, because he helps us with marketing in the summer. So it's not like we have it super cut and dried, but we could. If it was 2 families, and you have to be very careful when you work together, because human nature tends to get in the way. So you need to be Christian about it. You need to have clear things written out, so there's no misunderstandings. But I think it can work. It needs to work, because we're going to have to live together in heaven. So we better figure out how to do it here. But yeah, one summer, one winter. Yes.
Can you say something about involving any animals in farm?
Good question. Involving animals in the farm. That's something I've thought a lot about, because, this is my thinking. God created animals for us, and it wasn't to eat, right? So what were they for? And, obviously horses and oxen have been used through the centuries for agricultural work, and so there are certainly people who still do that, and that's great. We started down that road once. My brother, who was working with us at the time, bought some work horses, some big horses, and we were going to learn how to do it with horses. But, I never learned that as a child, and that's a whole nother college degree to, everything you do on the farm is like a whole different degree. You want to do bees? Great, but you got to learn how to do bees. You want to save seed, which I think is important, but that's a whole education you've got to get in saving seeds. So I don't know. My philosophy is they've got to pay their own way, or, they can't be a hole to pour money into. And we don't really want to get into meat animals. I'm not going to say whether that's a moral issue. You have to decide that for yourself. But for us, we don't want to be selling meat. Now, I will say my son does chickens for eggs. That's a very profitable business, actually. He sells them $6 a dozen for free-range eggs. And so, that there's a huge market for that in the States now. He takes them to market, and within the first hour, they're gone. He could sell probably 3 times as many eggs as he has.
The animals, you have to stick at the farm.
Animals definitely tie you down. Yeah, for sure. Without animals, you have much more freedom. But, God created the animals, and we just have to figure out where they fit into it. Obviously sheep can produce wool, but it's hard to make money with wool these days. Unless you get a niche market where you're harvesting the wool and making sweaters, something that you can sell for a lot of money. Some people do that, but yeah, I don't know what else to say on that. I haven't figured it out yet. Any other questions?
Are you going to be speaking about how can we know what kind of minerals the earth that we are using has, and the pH, and how can we work around it? I'm not at this conference. He's going to speak on that some? Okay. Because I feel like I don't know enough in that area. There's an Adventist in the States that's very knowledgeable, and I pay him to give me recommendations of what I should do. So, I know, the basics, but that can get very complicated very quickly. So that's not something I'm going to be talking about. You can only talk about so much in a few hours. Okay, well, thank you for your patience. It's lunchtime, so let's stand and pray together. Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for being here with us. Lord, our desire is to follow you, to serve you. I think we're all here because we realize that agriculture plays an important part in that. But we don't want it to be all-consuming. We don't want it to take all our time. And so I pray that you would help us to learn efficiencies so that we could have balanced lives. Just like too much mental work is not good, overworking physically is not good. And we want to
We want to live balanced lives. So teach us, Lord, I pray. And bless us as we go to lunch. Bless our fellowship. In Jesus' name, amen.